You would think being a millionaire would be a modern thing, but there were millionaires in the ancient world. In the Roman Empire, there were many different politicians and businessmen who were the ancient equivalent of a billionaire. One of the most famous examples we have is Cicero. Cicero was a wealthy and successful politician and lawyer in the 1st century BC, who sided with Pompeii against Julius Caesar in the Roman civil wars. Cicero famously purchased a home on the Palatine for 3.5 million sesterces. This was an incredible amount of money, even for the time. What is even more interesting is that the Romans were able to make such payments without physically moving any coin. The Romans are thought to have an economy that is based around physical bronze, silver, and gold coins, produced and standardized by the Roman government. But this is only partially true. The Romans, even at the smallest level, regularly made purchases using letters and tablets. Bankers in the ancient world were called argentari, and they were involved in everyday monetary transactions in ancient Rome. Depending on the situation, these letters and tablets served as ancient notes of credit. They also served as a document that would represent the transfer of money between different bank accounts. An example of this would be when C. Albinus bought a house in Rome from C. Pilius for 11.5 million sesterces. Cicero paid for his house on credit, which he paid for in 3 installments over the course of a year. It would have been unpractical for Cicero to pay for the millions of sesterces in tons of coinage. It was instead easier to make bank transfers of invisible money that was held in the different bank accounts of Cicero and Marcus Crassus. Marcus Crassus being the famous Roman general who invaded Parthia. He had sold his home and many other properties that he owned to fund his grand campaign in Parthia. Unfortunately for Crassus, his campaign would end in disaster. According to Cassius Dio, after his army was defeated by the Parthians, he had molten gold poured down his throat. Cicero's purchase of the home from Crassus is an example of how wealthy Romans regularly purchased large farms, estates, and homes from each other that were often worth 100,000 of sesterces, and sometimes even millions. Cicero received 300,000 sesterces in compensation when his home on the Palatine was destroyed after he was exiled from Rome. On his return from exile, he filed a lawsuit that would result in him winning the 300,000 sesterces. Another example of millionaires in the Roman Empire are the members of the Bank of Sulpitii in Puteoli. The members of the bank gave loans to wealthy Roman citizens. These loans were in the sum of 10,000s and 100,000s of sesterces. The banks were at its highest form during the reign of Emperor Claudius. We know that the slaves of Claudius gave loans to the bank in the amount of 100,000s of sesterces. We know about this bank from the many different business and legal documents from the bank in the form of wax tablets found by archaeologists. So, we know from this bank not from secondary sources, but from primary archaeological finds. The most interesting thing about this bank is what it highlights about the Roman slave law. The members of the bank were comprised of freedmen, Romans who were originally slaves but gained their freedom over time. We specifically know of 3 freedmen who ran the bank between 20 and 60 AD. Gaius Sulpicius Faustus was a banker at the Bank of Puteoli between 26 and 52 AD. He was a freedman whose last name translates to lucky. He is the one who founded the bank. It is an interesting social phenomenon that Roman slaves were able to become so wealthy as freedmen that they were able to found banks. From the bank, we also know of Gaius Sulpicius Cinarus and Gaius Sulpicius Onirus, who helped run the bank. Let's now take a deeper dive into the nature of Roman money to gain a better understanding of the lives of these millionaires. How were the Romans able to transfer such large amounts of money? The simple answer is that they use bank transfers and IOUs instead of constantly using coins. Even poor and middle-class Roman citizens purchased goods in this fashion. From Cicero's speeches called the In Verem, we know of the Roman millionaire Verus. These speeches were part of a legal and political move that Cicero made in attempt to curb corruption in the Roman state. Gaius Verus was a Roman magistrate who lived between 114 BC and 43 BC. He had also served as the governor of Sicily. During his speeches, Cicero mentions that his freedwoman Chiladon took bribes in the form of coins and signed tablets. We have very many sources that support this claim, both literary and archaeological. A great literary example comes from the great Roman poet and author Ovid. In one of his famous Latin works, Ovid talks about what it is like for men to go on dates in the city of Rome in the 1st century AD. Ovid states that boyfriends no longer have the excuse to not buy their girlfriends something if they do not have any coins on them, because they can pay with a letter or on credit. So just imagine you're walking down the street in ancient Rome in the 1st century AD with your wife or girlfriend who decides to stop at one of the many shops in the city. She chooses an expensive dress, and in response, you say that you don't have any coins on you, so she replies by telling you that you can pay with a letter instead. In summary, we can see that the elite in the Roman Empire had accumulated wealth to the degree that they were the modern equivalent of billionaires. This wealth had come from the many costly wars that Rome had fought between 400 BC and 100 BC, leading to most of the events and sources that we have just discussed. These wars were against great peoples such as the Samnites, the Gauls, the Greeks, the Macedonians, the Ptolemies, the Carthaginians, and the Seleucids. These wars brought new trade revenues and business opportunities to the Roman elites like Cicero. This is also at the same time in which distant trading with India and Central Africa would flourish, bringing in billions of sesterces worth of Eastern goods over the span of centuries. Thank you for watching my video. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel for future videos on ancient Roman history.